This is Dave with Taboo Customs. Today we've got a 99 TJ in the shop, and we're going to be looking at the frame, and we'll show you some areas that you might be concerned on your Jeep, or if you're looking to buy a Jeep. Specifically today on this one, we'll be looking at the front control arm area, the transfer case mounting area, the rear control arm area, and the rear section of the frame of the Jeep. So we picked this one to do a little video on because if you look at the Jeep right now, it might be a little misleading. Honestly, this Jeep looks great. You don't see a lot of the rust that you normally see. Now, oftentimes you'll see rust on top of the fenders, you'll see rust below the Jeep logo. However, with this one though, with these large flares here that they put on the sides, and that'll sometimes hide some of that. So you might be surprised when we lift this up and we take a look underneath as to the condition it is underneath. All right, so the first area we're going to look at is the most common area in the TJs that you're going to see issues, and that's going to be the control arm mounting areas in the rear, specifically both the lower and upper. Obviously, the reason why this Jeep is here, the reason why the customer called us, is the lower control arm came, disconnected from the Jeep. Unfortunately, not uncommon if you're not paying a lot of attention. You can obviously see now, once you look at it, that there is a lot of material missing, so it's pretty obvious. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the other side, which isn't nearly as bad, but we'll show you how you can start to tell if your Jeep, if your area here in the rear is going bad or not. All right, so this is the passenger side, and you can obviously see it's not nearly as bad as the driver's side was. What you can start to see, though, is you can start to see where when these frames rust, they'll basically kind of flake off into layers. And you can start to see some of the layers, especially on the outside. And they'll do it on the outside, they'll do it on the inside, and you can see, it's hard to see probably for you, but there's a crack along here. It's a crack actually through a layer of the frame. But as we go here, it's really not too bad on the inside. So let's take a look at the outside. So now that we're on the outside of the frame, you can see here that even though the inside, looked okay, the outside we can really start to see that the frame on this side is also starting to go bad. It's just not nearly to the point that the other side is at. Now that we have a hole here that has started to rust in the frame, this hole will continue to propagate more than likely forward, because typically the frames will rust usually only under the halfway mark of the frame, and it'll kind of follow a line here, which is basically due to the frame not having any holes in it, filling up with moisture and salt, mud, and not being able to go anywhere. And here in a little bit, we'll actually cut a chunk off the frame on the other side, and we can show you how much of a difference it makes from this area here below the center line to above the center line. But now that this has started to rust, you're really going to want to watch it, because eventually here it will move forward, and this lower control arm mount would also break off the frame. All right, so here on the bad side, you can see that we've gone in, we've cut out about an inch by inch square, going from about middle of the frame up to almost a half inch from the top of the frame, which when we fix this will all be welded up and get covered, so it'll get done up right. But now let's take a look at this piece. Okay, so as you can see, when we look at the piece, the bottom of it was roughly about halfway down the frame, and you can see how quickly the frame will go from a full thickness frame to basically nothing. So there's about a 1/4 inch here, and a 1/4 inch up from nothing, we've got full thickness of frame. So it's kind of crazy how when these fill, basically the level that they fill to will end up being, and anything below that ends up just disappearing. So another area that can pretty drastically fail in these frames due to rust is going to be the transfer case skid plate mounting area. And what will happen is this will rust, and the nuts in the frame can actually pull out of the frame, and the skid plate can fall. And we've seen that on a few Jeeps. And this one, I almost would guarantee that if we tried to take these bolts out here, either the bolts would break or the nuts would spin inside the frame, and honestly we'd have to replace them. anyway. Now on this side, you can see that the frame has started basically delaminating and splitting apart in here. You can see a space here where basically the transfer case and the frame have both rusted out enough that there's a large space between the transfer case and the frame that wouldn't have been there before. But if we take a look at the other side, we'll see that it's just as bad, if not worse. All right, so on the other side, you can see it's flaking apart as well, but it's actually a little bit worse in that right here, as we start digging out some of this frame, we can start to see that there's actually a hole inside the frame. And like I said, it wouldn't take a whole lot for, because this bolt here probably not holding much anymore, because that bolt is right there. So these two are basically holding all the weight on this side, so it wouldn't be too long before that additional weight could cause those to fail as well. All right, so for the next area we're going to take a look at, and that's the front lower control arm area. And this area is not nearly as common as the other two, the rear and the transfer case area, and even the steering box area, which on this Jeep is actually in great shape. And this, you can see, just like the rear, it will start rusting right here along the top edge of the lower control arm mount. Now the good news is I can't say that I've seen a front lower control arm mount actually fall off of a TJ, but it would be a much higher risk if it did. Being the steering axle, it's going to cause probably some difficulties in steering when that did break off, versus the rear axle, which would cause the rear to really dog track, but probably not a whole lot unless the rear really failed. So with this one, and a lot of times when we go through here, we check with a screwdriver, and here when we were doing that, we were able to easily pop through the frame, and then we started to notice that as we started breaking into it more and more, even here, this is the weld for the top of you can see the weld just flaking off. So this whole area right there, as you can see me scrape it, you can see we've got a large hole. So, all the way up to about right here, this weld is completely gone. So definitely an area to watch out for. Not nearly as common, but one we have seen on several TJs. So the last area we're going to take a look at in this Jeep that's bad is the rear section. The rear section, depending on how you've got it set up, may or may not be as critical as the suspension or the transfer case mounting, but in this case it is. And the reason for that is we've actually got a hitch mounted here. So normally this area back here that's supporting the Jeep would support the body, it supports the gas tank, of course you've got the bumper, but like I said, you don't have any of those critical suspension components that if it falls off you could cause an accident. However, with the hitch here, the hitch, if this frame did break, you could have an issue. And you can see right here, a lot of times where this rust will start will be where this bend is at, and that is right above one of the bolts for the hitch. So it's pretty critical that you keep this section of the frame solid with a hitch installed. So on this Jeep, we're having to go in and also install a kit back here for the rear section of the frame. So hopefully this helped to point out some areas that you might need to check out on your TJ, especially those safety critical areas with suspension mounting and the transfer case mounting. One area we did not look at, and that is the steering box mount area. Make sure you take a look at that area as well. Now we didn't show it on this Jeep because the Jeep frames are kind of weird. Sometimes one side will rust out really bad, sometimes the other one won't, sometimes the front will rust, the rear will rust. Sometimes there's not a whole lot of consistency in it, and the steering box area is one of those we see the least consistency in. And the most rusted out frames will actually see a steering box area that's completely looks like it's brand new, and that's what we've got with this Jeep. And others we'll see where the steering box area is completely rusted out and the rest of the frame's good. So make sure you check that area out as well. So thanks for watching. And as always, if you are looking for some more videos or kits for any of these areas to repair, we've got those kits on taboocustoms.com. And then you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you want to keep up with what we're doing.